It's funny when I look at it, and somebody recently described my job as counting costs, and it was part of a conversation, and I actually thought, you know what? There's so many costs that I cannot quantify. Just so many costs I cannot quantify. Can't get my head around, never will, never can. And yet these are absolutely hugely impacting upon projects. The cost of the anxious, worried client, the cost of the client who seeks perfection, the cost of the client who is under colossal strain, the cost of the client who's joyous and happy and relaxed and calm, and may not necessarily always should be. The cost of the frustration of clients, for them highly intelligent people, absolute wizards in their own sector, and the frustration that they have with understanding the construction sector. And it's very, very hard to turn to somebody who's that gifted and intelligent and just say something like, you got to trust the process, you got to take the long lens, you must be coherent and relax. Very hard. You're asking a huge amount of people under very stressful environments. The cost of cash flow control for the builder, coordination of labour, priority of jobs, the sequence, and the cash flow isn't how much is in the bank, it's how many jobs do I have, how many guys do I have, what's the allocation of that, controlling the variations, controlling the communications of them, controlling different jobs at different phases, controlling his workflow and his work type and his variety, not only his variety, but his variety of labour sources. So there's certain guys that are better at certain jobs, and you want them sequenced. So you may have great guys at groundworks, but they may not be able to do blockworks, or they may not be able to do roof works. So when the groundworks and drainage is done, that crew may be passed on to another job, and if he doesn't have it, then he's in incongruence. And so that's a huge cost for him. How do you quantify that? I'm sure there is some metrics, but I don't know. The pressure that professionals are underneath, whether it's architects or engineers, professionals is just a label. To me, people are all people. Everybody's a professional as far as I'm concerned. But in the traditional use of the word, the design team, every single element of them is under different pressures and different unknowns. Design, of structure, of interaction between each other, of work pace, of workflow themselves, and they actually mirror the builder in a lot of ways. It's never really talked about because everybody always talks about the builder's cash flow, but nobody ever really talks about the other people in the construction phase and their cash flow. So that is never really talked about in any size, shape or form or intensity, and it's often discarded. And that is what it is. And how they actually build, when they build, where they build. And there's one guy, there's one very wise guy said to me, you don't build when things are going bad, you build when they're going good. So, and the pressure that brings too, and the pressure of the back team that they have, and how much is in the back team or isn't in the back team. So that is pressure. The pressure of organisational type, organisational flow, pressure of partnerships. All of these are costs. All of them benefits too, but they're possible costs. Subcontractors, the unspoken people, often treated as secondary, but they're actually the whole basis of the construction industry. So I was in the UK, and I'm going to put some videos up about it, but it was at the major conference in the UK, about construction, around construction, future trends. But one of the biggest, most interesting statistics was 85% of construction companies have less than 50 people in it. They are small businesses, 85%. And I was sitting there utterly staggered at this statistic, and I was looking around and I go, I guarantee you, that 85%, very, very few of them are here. Very, very few of them. People that were there were bigger guys. And then the question is, what was I doing there? And the answer is, I don't know. I just felt an utter compulsion for growth and for developmentalness, for opportunity, for connectiveness, for different lenses, different possibilities, different ideas, different apps, different acknowledgements where people were on their journey and in their knowledge and in their sharing, to feel part of a collective. So I went for a lot of reasons. Cost me. Did cost me though. It wasn't just the money, it was the trauma of nearly being mugged and fighting back. And even though no physical interchanges were, it's a pretty intense environment, kids on scooters, and so that had its own cost, neurologically, physiologically, mentally, emotionally. Even though I can compartmentalize it as we do with all traumas, doesn't mean to say it doesn't cost though. Doesn't cost the things. So all of these unknowns, all of these finishings, the cost that occurs for the client, and it's not an individual one, it's a plural one, because it's multifold. Because at some stage, like any relationship, everybody has different lenses and perceives things in different times throughout the process. So the unquantifiable costs are just that, sheerly and utterly unquantifiable. But what they do have, they become behaviours, they become trends, they become patterns, they become, what you often see is pattern recognition. And we may not have words, we may not have languages for it. You can just see things. And you just begin to get a sense of patterns, sensory acuity, and these patterns then become into behaviours. Behaviours become part of the culture. The cultures have become part of the values then interlink with a compass, and then you have a guiding star, whether it's real north or not. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of the fragmentation. And everybody often talks about the fragmentation of the construction industry as if it's something bad. It can be, cannot be. Because on each project, you're going to have different people, different personalities, different rules, different values, different references, different interpretations, different belief systems, different subcultures. Even between the trades, there'll be radically different subcultures of how they address safety on every single issue. So the costs become behaviours, and the fragmented nature of it actually means that multiple people have it's a Pandora's box that works in both ways. Because then you have multiple leaders that can change and develop projects for good, and you also have the possibility that you're open to multiple influencers, for lack of a better word, that can also do it mal. So, and usually there's a coherent sense of leadership from multiple sources to keep things aligned. So how do you quantify these? I don't know. I don't know. 70 euros an hour, somebody listens to some Lacanian or Freudian psychoanalyst, 60 euros an hour for a counsellor. I do not know €100 an hour for an addiction specialist. You know, the invisibleness of this is what actually, and the duplicity of it. I once saw an absolute stunning girl out running, and as she got closer to me, her heart nearly broke, because I actually knew the girl and I knew the traumas that she had around her own mental health. And I was thinking the paradoxicalness of it, that here this middle-aged, wonderful, cool lady looked absolutely stunning for what she was carrying and the cost she was carrying. So I guess some things cannot be quantifiable, but they can be analysed, they can be interpreted, they can be changed. Change management can occur. Always better with a victory. Always better with a victory. And this is where real leadership comes in, and nobody sees it, nobody even speaks it, and it's usually the architect or the homeowner who manages to lead the ship very steadily, very calmly. But this is not possible. This is not possible without the engine room. The engine room's the contractor. And if they're aligned, there's peace and harmony. And if they're not aligned, what tends to happen is, over time, people tend to mirror the malbehaviour. Somebody acts one way, then the other person acts the other way. Then the other person acts, and there's multi-layered mirroring. And if it's positive, it works out well. And if not, we end up in utter flux, and we end up in a void. So, I wish I knew more, but I don't. And that's the reality of unquantifiable costs. And it's the behaviours we have to understand, and the drivers of the behaviours, and the methodology to interpret them, and to put tools and systems and calmness and stillness of leadership in, which so fortunately can come from multi-levels to address these issues. And sometimes it needs to be addressed directly and overtly. Sometimes not. So, long weekend. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy yourselves. Brilliant to be out and about. Absolutely love it. I do know one thing. If I wasn't out and about, there'd be a huge cost to me. I do know that there would be. Okay, take care of yourselves, folks. Thanks so much.